I do want to say briefly, and I think the next slide will be coming up, this next section and hearing what we've already heard today, or what are the opportunities and what is it that's going to be going forward. Well, how can the Children's Foundation ask you to think about that if we're not going to do it ourselves? So we will be, there it is, and a number of people in this room have already been engaged, and we want to invite more people to be engaged about having some early childhood community-based planning grants. You'll be hearing more about that. It'll be on our website. We'll be thinking about that for the summer. So stay tuned, and we really, really appreciate you being here. Tanya Ware is a native of Key West, Florida. She was born to parents who traveled throughout the United States, pioneering and planting churches. For more than 12 years, Tanya has focused her attention on a secular career as benefits and a retirement planner for a Fortune 500 company. She was also named as the top 40 under 40 Mississippi business professionals a few years back. She has won 2 Jackie Awards from the Mississippi Gospel Music Association, but more, and it goes on, but more recently, Tanya is also the director of the Mississippi Division of Ready Nation. Tanya is our moderator. Please come forward. Thank you. Thank you, Tanya.
It's so great to be here with you guys today. Thank you so much for this opportunity. So good morning. As mentioned, I am Tanya Ware, and I'm the project director for Ready Nation, Mississippi, where I lead the Mississippi Early Childhood Investment Council, a council of senior business executives from across the state of Mississippi who really love kids. And so we are here today to just kind of talk to you about high quality pre-K, and I wanted to just share a little bit about what Mississippi Ready Nation does and the work that we're focused on at the moment. So we believe that we must build a competitive future workforce by promoting research-based investments in children and youth, especially high-quality pre-K. Nationally, Ready Nation works with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation to learn from employers and include their voices in public investments in high-quality early child care and early learning. Mississippi businesses need a steady supply of educated, skilled, young people to build a stable workforce to compete on a regional, national, and global level. We know that if children get the right start, everything in their life really does change for the better. In Mississippi, children who participate in the state's high-quality pre-K program are more likely than their peers to accomplish certain key things that I want to just highlight for you just for a moment. National research over many decades shows that children experience high quality early learning, also graduate from high school, obtain a 4-year degree, and enter the workforce with skills that they need to compete and really be successful in life. I am a product of a high-quality early learning program. I know firsthand how critical early childhood education is and early care supports are. I was fortunate enough to be raised by a mother that worked in the early childhood development space for almost 40 years. She asked her dad if she could get married to my father at 19 years old, and he said, yes, you can if you promise me you'll get a college education. She graduated from Mississippi State University at 51 years old, and she did that studying early childhood education. She taught me well at home, and she gave me the confidence I needed to go to school and operate on a high level. Then in the 7th grade, I found out that I was dyslexic. I came home and I felt like my world was over. And I said to my mom, what will I do now with my life? And she said to me, Tanya, God made your brain. And then she said something to me that changed me forever. She said, and I'm going to support you. And with those words, I graduated from high school with honors. I've spoken at the United Nations. I'm a recording artist known around the world, and it all started with a high-quality early learning program. So I am, yes. So if you haven't received my calls, you will know I'm very, very passionate that if Mississippi's children get an opportunity to succeed, they'll take it. They will do their very best. And I think that this is the answer. If we as policymakers, as business leaders, as advocates, as educators, as clinicians all say to Mississippi's children, I'm going to support you, they will achieve and nothing will be impossible. So thank you so much for letting me share just a little bit about what I do in Ready Nation, Mississippi. I'm excited to share with you this panelist today, Dr. Chad Allgood, Mississippi Department of Human Services. Thank you for being here with us. And he'll be talking to us today and discussing things around child care and child care vouchers and federal funding that Mississippi has received for child care. Representative Richard Bennett, thank you for being with us, Mississippi House Education Chair. Representative Kent McCartney, Mississippi House. Dr. Ruth Patterson, pediatrician, UMMC. And then Tamara Smith, Director of Midtown Partners. And Holly Spivey, Governor of Mississippi's office. Today we want to start our discussion with Dr. Chad Allgood, who really needs no introduction, but he's going to talk to us today about child care vouchers and federal funding that Mississippi has received for child care and how it has been spent, and then what we can do to utilize it to the best of its ability.
Hi, good morning. Quick check, I want to make sure the glare off my head is not blinding anybody. So I don't see any hands raised, so I think we're good to go. So when we're talking about childcare, the first thing that I want to do is kind of lay out what the current landscape of childcare looks like in Mississippi. As of right now, we have just under 1,500 licensed childcare programs, and in those childcare programs, there's approximately 120,000 children that are enrolled in those programs. Just over 90,000 of those children are birth to 5, and then the other 30,000 are your school age, which in the child care realm, that's your before and after school care programs. In our program, I'm the co-director of Division of Early Childhood Care and Development at MDHS, and we do a few different things in the realm of child care. The first thing that we do, and probably where most of our funding goes, is our child care subsidy program. And the subsidy program is a program that's designed to ensure that families have access to high quality care and education no matter what their income levels are. We have 4 priority populations that we work with, but our program is capped at 85% of the state median income, and that's based on household, and that's a federal requirement. So as long as a program, so as long as a family, as long as their income level doesn't exceed that cap, and as long as they are working at least 25 hours a week or participating in a full-time educational program, and that can be a variety of different educational programs, then they would qualify for that program. Another thing that we do, and I'm going to talk more about this, is we also have several programs that work to increase the level of quality in child care. I'm going to get to that in just a moment. But for a second, I wanted to talk about the federal relief money that we got during the pandemic, because and not necessarily to give a shout out to us, but more to give a shout out to the child care programs that put this funding to use. So as you know, back in 2020, it was around March of 2020, the pandemic hit really, really hard. And during that time, there were a lot of people that sheltered in place, and I know earlier we talked about some parents stayed at home, and they were blessed to be able to work from home, but there were some parents that just was not the case. So when you think about those parents that work in the healthcare field, those that work in healthcare ancillary services, those that do inspections, those that were working in restaurants, those that were working in grocery stores, gas stations, all those essential businesses, child care programs in Mississippi did not shut down. They continued to serve those families. And I think it's really, really important that we acknowledge the efforts that our child care industry, these teachers, they were literally putting their health at risk, their safety at risk during this time to ensure that these children and their families still had daily care, that these parents that could not work from home, that they still had a safe place for their children to go. And so with those federal dollars, most recently, we have awarded out over $319 million to child care programs using stabilization funds that were issued through the American Rescue Plan. I have heard from several of the directors across the state in these child care programs. Let me tell you, they are putting these dollars to work already. They are making improvements in their programs. They're offering bonuses to those teachers that never stopped working. They're looking at implementing curriculum. They're doing a lot of really, really fantastic work. And so getting back into the subsidy piece of it, last year in 2021, our office issued over $117 million in subsidy. Now that sounds like a lot of money, but with that $117 million, we only served a little over 31,000 children. And again, when you do the math, if you divide the 117 million by the 31,000, that comes out to about $3,700 to $3,800 per child, and that's for the entire year. Just to put things a little bit in perspective about just how far, that money can go. So then getting into the quality piece of what we do, we also have additional funding that was also authorized by the American Rescue Plan. And what we're doing with that is we're looking at expanding the training that we offer to child care providers, offering them support on health and safety, but then also curriculum, classroom management, working with children that have special needs, all of these different components of the early childhood program. We're also looking at how we can expand capacity. Earlier, when you looked at the map, I think it was the Christmas tree map or the Christmas map that Izzy mentioned. There are areas of the state where there may not be existing licensed child care. And one thing to keep in mind is Mississippi is a very rural state, but just because a county is considered rural doesn't mean that there's not a need for child care. And there are alternatives to fully licensed child care, like family child care. And these family child care programs, there's research out there that shows that they can provide an equally high level of quality in terms of care and education for young children. So looking at expanding capacity, we're also offering developmental screenings to families across the state. By the way, all these services are free of charge. And then we offer some navigation to support services for those children that are identified as needing additional care. We're offering training and technical assistance to family child care, to that specific model of early childhood education. We're offering leadership. We're offering leadership seminars, leadership courses, which includes just in terms of leadership itself, but then also the business of childcare. How do you run the business? How do you establish a budget? How do you read income statements? How do you put together a business plan if you want to look at expanding capacity, things of that nature. And then we're just overall looking at the way we identify quality in early childhood education. And right now we're in a building phase in that respect. We want to create a culture of this model of continuing to offer or continuing to do things better. A lot of you may have heard of continuous quality improvement. We want to look at introducing that more into the early childhood realm. But we want to ensure that as these supports are put in place, that we're doing so in a way that supports child care providers. And I think that as we're talking about, when we're looking at child care and we're talking about how child care is a workforce development support, I think we also have to make sure that we're investing in the workforce in the child care industry. Right now, there are about 12,400 teachers that work in child care programs. And I mentioned that we are doing some things to really help uplift those teachers. But bottom line is, these teachers need support. Right now, most teachers that work in early childhood maybe make minimum wage, maybe a little bit over. We need to do better by them. They're working day in, day out with one of our most precious assets in our state. And we need to look at offering them a better quality of life also. I can tell you just in conversations that I have with child care directors, with child care teachers, this is a field of extremely devoted individuals, and they are up to the challenge. I promise you, they are up to the challenge. And I will say, when we talk about child care And when I'm talking about childcare, I'm talking about pre-K. Anyone that works in that early childhood realm, early childhood truly is the backbone of today's workforce, but it's also the hands that are uplifting the workforce of tomorrow. Thank you.
Our child care teachers are definitely committed. We'll now hear from Representative Bennett, and he'll give information on goals and history, as well as opportunities to move Mississippi's early child care and early learning programs forward.
Thank you. Wow, I don't have all those statistics and information to give you. Let me give you a little background on what we as a legislator, how we go about passing legislation. When I came into, when I was appointed chairman of education, it was about 4 or 5 years ago, and I agreed to it. At that time, the House of Representatives was taking out about 70 pieces of legislation a year, taking them up. And when I looked at it, I felt that the legislature was micromanaging the school districts. And we as legislators are not the professionals. We were passing legislations that felt good or we thought was good. And it was micromanaging. It put a lot, what it did, it put a lot of red tape into teachers, into school districts and all. So my first year, we came back with 6 general bills, from about 65 to 6. We are not the professionals. We do not know what is best. You are the professionals. You are trained. You go to school. That's why an organization like this is so important. Y'all need to tell us what you need. You need to stay in touch with your legislatures. I come from an area of the state where we have good schools, where we have pre-K offerings. Of the 3 county school districts, of the 3 counties down there, I think 11 of our school districts are A district, and I think there's just 1 that's not an A in the 3 county area. So when I became legislator, I started traveling the state, going to different schools, different places, and I was somewhat surprised. And what I found was the resources weren't there. There were not private pre-Ks. There were some Head Starts scattered here or there, but the facilities wasn't there. And I went and visited with some parents in a program that the parents agreed that I could go there, and the organizations wanted me to go there, and I went. And is what I found, and I'll give you an example. When I went to Belzona, most of the town, that's in Humphreys County, most of the town is closed down. There's no industry there. So it's hard to recruit teachers to go there because they have to bring their families and they have to have a school for them. They have to have a job for their spouses and stuff. So it's kind of hard. But the one thing that struck me, whenever I visit Tunica a few times back in the day, the one thing that struck me, and I walked away with a whole different attitude, a whole different outlook on the schools. What I found was children in those schools that wanted to learn. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm telling you, I guess I brought my prejudices to F districts or whatever, and when I went, I thought I was going to see chaos. I didn't think I was going to see teaching. But what I saw was kids that really wanted to learn. I saw people in those classrooms that really was doing their best. But they didn't have qualified teachers. They had teacher assistants in there who had not been to college, and they were full-time substitutes. They really cared. They were doing the best they could. They really cared about those kids, but they weren't qualified. It really bothered me. And when I met with parents in these areas, I found parents that want the same thing you and I want for our kids. And I had to bring that back to my caucus at the House. These people want the same thing, but they don't have the ability, they don't have the resources, and they can't do it. A lot of them grew up in a failed education system. So I guess whenever I look at this is whenever I first really started looking at pre-K, and some of the people in here brought pre-K to me, and there's no bigger advocate than the people in this organization, and Holly Spivey here is at my office all the time pushing pre-K. But I really believe, and it made me realize, in order to raise Mississippi up, everyone's got to be raised in Mississippi. The Delta's got the education system in the Delta and the other poor areas of our state. We've got to put the resources in order to teach those kids. If not, it's just a cycle. I think pre-K is the way to go in these districts. To the early learning is vital. And I guess I get off on this rambling and get off the subject here of pre-K, but I think they all fit together. I want to say this about the education system in Mississippi. I don't think we get the recognition in the state that we get nationally for where we've been. I mean, we were 50th in the nation. People used to say, thank God for Mississippi. We were kind of a joke. We've had, Holly, you may know this, I think like 18 states that have come to us and said, what is Mississippi doing? I'm fixing to give you a statistic here to think about this. The kids in poverty are the children in poverty in Mississippi. The minority students in Mississippi scored higher, had higher gains than anyone in the nation the year before the pandemic. That is huge. That's what Mississippi has to continue to do in order to get off the bottom. I think teachers, superintendents, principals, it's a thankless job a lot of time. I know it's rewarding. I grew up with educators, and but it all starts with leadership. It all starts with demanding the teachers do their job and that the students learn. The students can learn. It doesn't matter whether we have proven that. It doesn't matter what your zip code is or what your poverty level is. If you're in poverty, yes, there's no doubt it's going to take more resources. It's going to be a little harder. But I want to thank y'all for what y'all do. And bang on us, bang on us. We are trying to add pre-K every year. We had a bill this year that died. Hopefully we can revive it some way. The House passed it out. The Senate, for whatever reason, let it die. But anyway, keep on your elected officials. They do listen.
Bennett, thank you. Now, Holly needs no introduction, but I will say that she is the first annual Pre-K Champion Award recipient from the Mississippi Early Childhood Investment Council, and we're thankful for all the work she does. Yes. One of our council members, a good friend of mine, Jeff Good, he said to me, Tanya, high-quality early childhood education is economic justice, and that really sums it up. She's going to share with us now on what the state Early Childhood Advisory Council is working on and some of their functions and accomplishments.
All right, thank you, Tanya. So the State Early Childhood Advisory Council, that was established to fulfill the requirements of the reauthorization of the Head Start Act in 2007. All of the members of the council are appointed by the governor, and so, you know, the Head Start Collaboration Director, which is myself, I'm on that council. We have members from the Department of Health, the University of Mississippi Medical Center, the Department of Human Services. Dr. Allgood currently serves as the chair of the council. We have 5 child care directors. These 5 child care directors are from all parts of our state. We have representation from the Department of Mental Health and from the Department of Education. Dr. Wright is on the council, as well as Dr. Jill Dent. And then we have the 619 coordinator, also that serves on that council. The Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians is also represented on that council. Child Protective Services. We have a couple of representatives from IHL. One is from Jackson State University and Mississippi State University and Ole Miss. And then we have representation from Jackson Public Schools. The Children's Foundation, Linda Southward is on there as well as the Barksdale Reading Institute. I'm sure that I have left someone off. And I would be remiss if I didn't also say that Tamara Smith is one of our child care directors, and she's on the council as well. So I think it's also important to note that the council is exactly what it is. It is an advisory council. So oftentimes we have members from the public that might make a recommendation, bring it to the council, make a recommendation, and from there, the council will have numerous conversations about this, and then if, make that recommendation, whatever that might be, and take that to the governor to have him look at that. We do not set policy. I think that's important to note, but we are exactly what it says, which is an advisory council. So I think that as we are looking at child care and pre-K and the workforce, this advisory council is really a group that is ready to serve the children and families of our state. And I think that is being reflected in the work in the committees that we have on the council. So currently we have 4 different committees on the council. We have workforce development and retention, family support and access, policy, accountability and data, and then an early intervention committee. So we do have a website, and I would encourage you all our meetings are open. They are every other month, and they are held at the 2 museums, but they are also live streamed. I would encourage you, if you are at all interested, if you have questions about it, you can contact me, of course, but you can contact our executive director, who's Andrea Sanders, the Commissioner for Child Protective Services, or also Dr. Chad Allgood, or really any member of our council. Our names are all listed on the website. Another resource that is on there that we are looking at is an asset map. And so we are actually in the very beginning stages of this asset map. When the council was appointed by Governor Reeves, one of his requests was to have the council look at, kind of coordinating an asset map. And so we weren't exactly sure what that was going to look like or how we were going to do it, and or how long it was going to take either. So what we have done is we all met together, and we're actually working with a group through that's kind of coordinating this work with us through the Kellogg Foundation, which is Start Early. That's the group that's kind of helping us with this. And so at the end of the day, this public asset map is going to be available to you all, and it's going to be hopefully be able to answer questions for policymakers and for child care directors and pre-K, folks that are in the community. And we're going to be looking at funding that is, public funds, private funds, and such. So we're hoping that this will be finished by the end of the year. But when it will all be available on our website for anyone to use. So thank you all very much. Okay.
Representative Kent McCartney joined the Mississippi House of Representatives in 2019. He's the vice chairman of the House Education Committee. And thank you for being here. And in looking at the Alabama story, we like to ask, where are the opportunities for Mississippi as we grow and increase in early learning in the state?
Sure. Thank you all again for having me. And I wanted to, just say that I work a lot obviously with Chairman Bennett, serving as his vice chairman, and with Holly as well. And these two are truly the best resource for me that we could possibly have, because they've been in it. I'm new, obviously newer, and they've really, gone out of their way to advocate for this for longer than I've been in office, clearly. And just to have, to work with them closely on this stuff has been such a privilege the last few years I've been in the legislature. So just would be remiss if I did not thank them for that. As far as where we can go from here, I think that when you look at how far we've come in such a relatively short amount of time, I mean, the Collaborative Act was originally passed in 2013, obviously well before, I was in office, but in that time, we've come so far to the point where we're nationally recognized for the quality of the program we have in the state, which I think is huge, because it's one thing to offer early childhood, it's to have it. It's another thing to have, another thing entirely to have something that's high quality that actually shows results. And I think that it's very clear from the work that our collaboratives have done in our communities that it's making a huge difference. My area is one of the communities that has had a collaborative nearly since the beginning. And I think that, my mom is a principal at a pre-K-5 school in my district. And, she speaks all the time to the impact that this program has on the kids in the community and on the families in the community. I think we've all, everybody that's spoken before me has touched on the importance of early childhood education, not just, as a means to educate our children, but the economic impact of that really it can't be understated. It's such a huge driver to have something like this where, our kids are learning, parents are able to work, and then the kids, the outcomes that we see in our 4 and 5-year-olds as they go through the education system is huge. So I think, looking at what Alabama's done and the success of their program, I think that, there's a lot, obviously, that we've already just in the last year, in the last session, doubled the size of our collaboratives, the size of the collaborative program. Chairman Bennett mentioned the legislation that we worked on this year. I've actually worked on it every year for since I was first elected, to raise the rate for the state portion of the rate that the state pays to our collaboratives to $2,500 per pupil, and $1,250 for half-day students. And that, to me, that is another thing that's a no-brainer, that when we speak with our collaboratives, when we talk to the communities that don't have collaboratives, they need that. I mean, they need that extra support in order to make the collaborative work financially in their area. So I think that's something that's extremely important that we've got to pass that. The chairman mentioned the House passed it, and I'm always hopeful that until I've learned in my 3 short sessions that nothing is dead until we're gone. So hopefully, we can get that out this year. So I think that would make a huge difference. And that to the question, that's an important part of expanding the collaboratives throughout the state. We've got to provide that extra support where needed, and I think that that's something that we need to do. So again, I think that there's so much good that we're doing, and I think that's very important for us to recognize that and how much we've done in such a short time. And I think just continuing boosting the support from the state to the collaboratives we already have, to prospective new collaboratives, and then continuing to grow the overall investment. The chairman fought last year from the lottery money to double the size of the overall investment, as I mentioned. That's something that we would love to do again this year with the additional money that we have in the Education Enhancement Fund from the lottery. So I think that's an excellent use of that money. There's no better investment for us to make. And I think that pays dividends, and all of you in here know that pays dividends for generations when you get the ball rolling on something like this. So thank you again for having me. And I want to also say, Holly spoke, obviously as a member of the council spoke to that. That is has been a huge resource as well. We had a really great conversation, very early morning meeting. I was not hopeful. 8 o'clock meetings in the legislature are usually not very productive. But we had an excellent meeting with members of the council a couple of months ago and got some really good actionable ideas. And the chairman mentioned this as well. Lean on take your ideas. You all know more than we do. Throw those at us until we respond. However it is you can get them to us, whether it's an 8 o'clock meeting, those are hard to come by in Jackson, I know, but whether it's an 8 o'clock meeting, phone call to your own representative, a text, we need to hear from all of you because you obviously know more than we could ever know. And things like that, you just never know what's going to come from a conversation. We had several, again, I mentioned several really solid, actionable ideas come out of that meeting that we can, take, and we can, I think we can do really good things with those. So that cannot be overstated how important it is for you to, even if we're not always asking, you know, at the end of the day, you know better than we do, so let us know. Thank y'all again.
Thank you so much. At this time, we'll hear from Dr. Ruth Patterson, and she'll discuss the importance of developmental screenings in the early years. Dr. Patterson.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So how does the healthcare system intersect with our educational colleagues here? How many of you know a child in your community who has a developmental delay or a behavioral concern? What about, absolutely. What about in your child or your grandchild's schoolroom? What about in your own family? Okay. So what we know, statistics support that 1 in 6 children in the state of Mississippi will be diagnosed with a developmental delay. 1 in 68 children will be diagnosed with autism. And if you're a little fellow, it's 1 in 42. And we think those are old statistics. We know that we are seeing an increased incidence of autism across the state. What we do know, though, if we have early detection of a developmental delay through screening, that we can change the course for this particular child. Not only can we potentially improve their developmental outcome, but in some cases, if we've gotten them in for screening, referred them for early intervention services, and they've participated in that, we may even absolutely take away that particular delay. So the American Academy of Pediatrics has put out guidelines to encourage us a schedule of when we need to screen all children, not just those that we think are at risk, but every child should receive a formal developmental assessment to make sure that we identify any developmental concerns. And we know that this is very important that we do this in the first few years of life because, as has already been pointed out, there is such critical brain development in those first few years. The brain triples in size from birth to age 3, and we know that those nerve pathways connections are laid down in those first few years, and they form the foundation or the basis for lifelong learning and behavior for that child for the rest of his life. So we want to make sure that we are offering these kids maximum support in those first few years so that we can make sure if there's a concern that it's being fully supported. Because we know that these are the children that are going to form our workforce for our future. So in the past few years, I've had the pleasure of working with Dr. Susan Buttress with the Child Health and Development Project. And one of our priorities has been to get out into our healthcare community and make sure that they are aware of the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics guidelines, that we are actually screening these kids and making sure that they're getting into services so that we can maximize their potential. But the last point I'd like to make, you know, genetically, most of our kids are equal, but the environment plays a major part in what their ultimate outcome will be. And not only has the pandemic brought out or emphasized the stressors in these children's lives, but just think in terms of regular stressors even prior to the pandemic. We know that children who are under stress do not learn quite as well, so we have to make sure that we are addressing those concerns. And stressors such as simple things, parental separation or divorce. Heaven forbid if that child is abused or neglected, or in a household where there are mental disorders, or a household where there's a parent that's incarcerated. And aside from these, just other things in our environment like chronic poverty, chronic housing insecurity, living in a neighborhood where there's neighborhood violence that's an everyday part of their lives. So again, we want to intersect with the educational community because we want to make sure that these kids are screened, that they're into their healthcare providers, that they're receiving services. If there's further evaluation that's needed for us to make a diagnosis so that we can take a comprehensive look at what we need to offer the child, but we want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to maximize the potential of every child here in Mississippi. Thank you.
She made a really important statement. We want to make sure we're doing all we can to make sure every child succeeds in Mississippi. Our final speaker and panelist today is Ms. Tamara Smith. She's the Director of Midtown Partners, and she's going to discuss how child care centers are changing today in Mississippi, as well as give examples of some of the programs at Midtown. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to correct my title. So I'm the early childhood director of Midtown Partners. And so I'm Tamara Smith, and I'm the director of Little Samaritan Montessori Center. And I just want to talk about, just during this time of the pandemic, how our child care system has changed. More so, we need workers. You know, I hear everyone talking about the early education and pre-K, but we also have to make you aware that we need workers. As I talk to providers across the state of Mississippi, you know, I hear people talking about the seats at the table for children, but they don't have workers coming to work. So I say to the legislators, to the business that have to have the workers in their place to work, that we need workers. So during this pandemic, one of the things, I was having a parent-teacher conference, to give you an example. We was fully staffed before COVID hit. But once COVID hit, a lot of teachers left the field and went home. And so then I started hiring. But before that, our teachers stayed with us for years. One of the things, we do offer benefits. We offer competitive salary, 401k for teachers. There's things that you don't see in child care center. So we wasn't dealing with a high turnover rate with staffing. But now I have. In the last 2 years, we have dealt with over 30 plus teachers that came through the program, which is not good for children as well. But I say that we need more teacher training programs so that we have teachers come into the program better prepared to serve the children. Just as I was having the parent-teacher conference with parents, I started talking to my parents about, hey, we're looking for workers. And I had a parent to call me back and say, Tamara, I would like to come work. And I said, do you have child care experience? And she said, no, but I have children that I have raised. I said, okay, that's a plus. Do you have a degree? She said, I do, but it's not in early childhood, it's in art. And I said, well, that's a plus too. And so I end up hiring her, and I say that to say that she has came in, she has been willing to learn about the early childhood system, learn about the development domains, which are very important that teachers come to the workforce knowing. And so I have transferred the way I hire. I'm not looking for teachers that already have experience. I'm looking for somebody that have a willingness to want to learn, a willingness to have passion and love working with children and having fun working with children. So I came here to say, because before Linda called me last Tuesday before to ask me about that, I was like, what would I say to the people? But I say to y'all today that we need teachers to come to the workforce better prepared. We need teacher training programs. Teachers that's at the community college or the university level going to study early childhood need to be inside the child care centers doing their internship. Laboratory schools are good. I think they are great for teachers to work with their professor, but we really need them in these schools, child care centers, seeing what we are doing. This is what you're coming out to do in the real world. So we need more of that. I also want to address, today I heard everyone talk about what wonderful programs we have as far as pre-K program we do. But I really need y'all to understand early childhood happened at birth to all the way up to age 8, but we're taking it to 12, birth to 12. But I say that because I heard a lot about pre-K. As I read the story of the Alabama story, I was very impressed with Miss Jean and what she had done in Alabama. But when I went to look a little further, I was looking for what support service were there for birth to 3. Like what programs, what funding is there to support teachers? What funding is there to have more education programs for teachers? And I wasn't able to find any, and I can have this conversation after if there are any, because I would love to hear about that. But I want to make the importance of 0 to 3. Y'all, we need help with the teachers' training program. We need help with funding there. We need help. So I say, let's invest early at the age of 0 to 3, so that when we get to pre-K, all these things are happening. You getting the return of interest at 4, that we may not need to put so much money into the pre-K program. We love to have it, but let's start at 0 to 3, because those teachers are building the brain. They are building that brain. So I tell them all the time, you're not just teachers, you're architects. Y'all are building these children's brain every day. And I know sometimes you come in a child care center and you think, oh, these teachers are taking care of the children, doing a wonderful job. But when I hear about quality, I think about my classrooms. I think about the teachers talking to those infants. And as they talking to those infants, those little synapses are going off in their brains and making those connectors so that their brain grow. And then when I go down to the toddler classroom and those teachers are talking and having those back and forth conversations where those toddlers are learning language, now I see the literacy going, right? When I get to that 2-year-old classroom and I see those children up in there and they are washing dishes, and my parents come in the program and they say, oh, that's cute. And I'm like, cute? That is cute, huh? But then I said, do you know what skills they're learning? And they said, washing dishes. I said, no, it's math, because it's order and sequence. You got your soap water, your rinse water, and then the child have to dry the dish and put it away. 1, 2, 3. And that teacher have to go through that. And you can even talk about some science there, right? You got some language there. So it's not about, they can't see that, but we can, because we have studied and worked so hard at this that I can tell you the development domains behind it. I can tell you the science behind it. When the parents hear that, they're like, wow. So I say, at the pre-K program, you can really see the kids learning math, right? 1 + 1 and putting those objects together to get to. But also in those 2-year-old programs, you can see the same thing, but it's play-based. The children are learning the same skills. If you think about writing, when children come to your program in the pre-K school and they holding a pencil like this, it's because some of that tonguing didn't take place in those pre-K, the 0 to 3 classroom. But we do a lot of tonguing, which helps with those writing skills. So I say to you, 0 to 3, fund it all the way. Just not give all the money to pre-K. I'm sorry, y'all talked about that a lot, but I have to address 0 to 3. Let's start getting coaching programs for those teachers, getting training for those teachers. Like, we need that. And access. I heard the representative, I didn't catch his name, Richard. Hey, child care providers, if you're in the room, we need to start emailing, texting, getting to Richard to say, hey, this is what we need. Because he said a mouthful up here. He said, we've been micromanaging, we was micromanaging the school system. But we need to tell you all what we need, because we on the ground running. And as I'm sitting here today, I'm thinking about what's happening back at the center. Because when I say we are short-staffed, we are. And it's not like we don't have the need. It's not like we're not looking. We are. The people are not looking for jobs. So we got to find ways of making early childhood more attractive and bringing the teachers that we have in child care. We have to make sure that we have them trained. So we need more training programs. So I say to the business leaders, the legislators, and everyone in the room, please help save us.
Can you guys hear her passion?